Hello and welcome to Bookspot. I'm Earl Wyenberg. This time we will continue our reading of Rewards and Fairies by Rudyard Kipling. We are listening to the tale of a young man who calls himself Pharaoh, who is from England with strong French connections, a foot on each side of the channel, but was press-ganged, which means kidnapped by the military, and wound up in America for several years. And in the process has met many famous people. "But after that you met Napoleon, didn't you?" said Una. "Wait just a little, dearie. After that, Toby and I went to Lebanon and the reservation, and being older and knowing better how to manage him, I enjoyed myself well that summer with fiddlin' and fun. When we came back, the brethren got after Toby because I wasn't learning any lawful trade, and he had hard work to save me from being apprenticed to Hembolt and Geyer, the printers. 'Twould have ruined our music together, indeed it would, and we escaped that. Then old Master Roosh, the leather breeches maker round the corner, took a notion that I was cut out for skin dressing. But we were rescued. Along toward Christmas, there comes a big sealed letter from the bank saying that Monsieur Tallyrand had put $500, £100, to my credit there to use as I pleased. There was a little note from him inside, he didn't give any address, to thank me for past kindnesses and my believing in his future, which he said was pretty cloudy at the time of writing. I wished Toby to share the money. I hadn't done no more than bring Tallyrand up to 118. The kindnesses were Toby's, but Toby said, 'No, liberty and independence forever. I have all my wants, my son.' So I give him a set of new fiddle strings, and the brethren didn't advise us any more. Only Pastor Medder, he preached about the deceitfulness of riches, and Brother Adam Goose said if there was a war with England, they'd surely shoot down the bank. I knew there wasn't going to be any war, but I drew the money out, and on Red Jacket's advice, I put it into horseflesh, which I sold to Bob Bicknell for the Baltimore stagecoaches. That way, I doubled my money inside a 12-month. "You gypsy, you proper gypsy," Puck shouted. "Why not? 'Twas fair buying and selling. Well, one thing leads to another. In a few years, I made the beginnings of a worldly fortune and was in the tobacco trade." "Ah," said Puck suddenly. "Might I inquire if you'd ever sent any news to your people in England or in France?" "Course I had. I wrote regular every 3 months after I made money in the horse trade. We Lees don't like coming home empty-handed, even if it's only a turnip or an egg, it's something. Oh yes, I wrote good and plenty to Uncle Auret, and Dad don't read very quickly. Uncle used to slip over New Haven way and tell Dad what was going on in the tobacco trade." "I see. Auret's and Lees, like as 2 peas. "Go on, Brother Square-Toes," said Puck. Pharaoh laughed again and went on. "Tallyrand, he'd gone up in the world same as me. He'd sailed to France again and was a great man in the government there a while, but they had to turn him out on account of some story about bribes from American shippers. All our poor emigres said he was surely finished this time, but Red Jacket and me didn't think it likely, not unless he was quite dead. Big Hand had made his peace treaty with Great Britain, just as he said he would, and there was a roaring trade twixt England and the United States for such as take the risk of being searched by British and French men-of-war. Those two was fighting, and just as his gentleman told Big Hand had happened, the United States was catching it from both. If an English man-of-war met an American ship, he'd press half the best men out of her and swear they was British subjects. Most of 'em was. If a Frenchman met her, he'd likely have a go at her cargo, swearing it was meant to aid and comfort the English. And if a Spaniard or a Dutchman met her, they was hanging on to England's coattails too. Lord only knows what they wouldn't do. It came over me that what I wanted in my tobacco trade was a fast-sailing ship and a man who could be French, English, or American at a pinch. Luckily, I could lay my hands on both articles. So along toward the end of September in the year 99, I sailed from Philadelphia with 111 hogshead of good Virginia tobacco in the brig Berthe Auret, named after Mother's maiden name, hoping 'twould bring me luck, which she didn't, and yet she did." "Where was you bound for?" Puck asked. Any port I found handiest. I didn't tell Toby or the brethren. They don't understand the ins and outs of the tobacco trade." Puck coughed a small cough as he shifted a piece of wood with his bare foot. It's easy for you to sit and judge, Pharaoh cried, but think of what we had to put up with. We spread our wings and run across the broad Atlantic like a hen through a horse fair. Even so, we was stopped by an English frigate 3 days out. He sent a boat alongside and pressed 7 able seamen. I remarked it was hard on honest traders, but the officer said they was fighting all creation and hadn't time to argue. The next English frigate we escaped was no more than a shot in our quarter. Then we chased 2 days and a night by a French privateer, firing between squalls, and the dirty little English 10-gun brig, which made him sheer off, had the impudence to press another 5 of our men. That's how we reached the chops of the channel. 12 good men pressed out of 35, and 18-pound shot hole close beside our rudder. Our mainsail looked like spectacles where the Frenchman had hit us, and the channel crawling with short-handed British cruiser. Put that in your pipe and smoke next time you grumble about the price of tobacco. Well then, top it all off, we was trying to get at our leaks. A French lugger comes swooping at us out of the dusk. We warned him to keep away, but he fell aboard us, and up climbed his jabbering redcaps. We couldn't endure any more. Indeed, we couldn't. We went at him all we could lay hands on. It didn't last long. They was 50-odd to our 23. Pretty soon I heard the cutlasses thrown down, and someone bellowed for the sacre captain. Here I am, I says. I don't suppose it makes any odd to you thieves, but this is the United States brig Berthe Aurette. My aunt, man says, laughing. Why is she named that? Who's speaking? I said. 'Twas too dark to see, but I thought I knew the voice. Ensign de Vassaux Estef Lestrange, she sings out, and then I was sure. Oh, I says, it's all in the family, I suppose, but you have done a fine day's work, Stephen. He whips out the binnacle light and holds it to my face. He was young Lestrange, my full cousin, I hadn't seen since the night the smack sank off Telcom Thai 6 years ago. Phew, he says, that's why she was named for Aunt Berthe, is it? What's your share in her, Pharaoh? Only half owner, but the cargo's mine. That's bad, he says. I'll do what I can, but you shouldn't have fought us. Steve, I says, you aren't ever going to report our little fallout as a fight. Why, a revenue cutter would laugh at it. So would I if it wasn't the Republican Navy, he says. But 2 of our men are dead, you see, and I'm afraid I'll have to take you to the prize court at Le Havre. Will they condemn my baccy? I asks. To the last ounce. But I was thinking more of the ship. She'd make a sweet little craft for the Navy if the prize court had let me have her. Then I knew there was no hope. I don't blame him. A man must consider his own interests. But not every dollar I had was in ship or cargo, and Steve kept on saying you shouldn't have fought us. Well, then the lugger took us to Le Havre, and that being the one time we did want a British ship to rescue us, why, of course, we never saw one. My cousin spoke his best for us at the prize court. He owned he'd no right to rush alongside in the face of the United States flag, but we couldn't get over those 2 men killed, you see, and the court condemned both ship and cargo. They was kind enough not to make us prisoners, only beggars. And young Lestrange was given the Berthe Aurette to rearm into the French Navy. I'll take you round to Boulogne, he says. Mother and the rest will be glad to see you, and you can slip over to New Haven with Uncle Aurette. Or you can ship with me, like most of your men, and have a turn at King George's loose trade. There's plenty of pickings, he says. Crazy as I was, I couldn't help laughing. I've had my allowance of pickings and stealings, I said. Where are they taking my tobacco? 'Twas being loaded on the barge. Up the Seine to be sold in Paris, he says. Neither you nor I will ever touch a penny of that money. Get me leave to go with it, I says. I'll see if there's justice to be gotten out of our American ambassador. There's not much justice in this world, he says, without a navy. But he got me leave to go with the barge, and he gave me some money. That tobacco was all I had, and I followed him like a hound followed a snatched bone. Going up the river, I fiddled a little to keep my spirits up, as well as to make friends with the guard. They was only doing their duty. Outside of that, they were the reasonablest of God's creatures. They never even laughed at me. So we come to Paris by river along in November, which the French had christened Brumaire. They'd given new names to all the months, and after such an outrageous, silly piece of business as that, they weren't likely to trouble themselves with my rights and wrongs. They didn't. The barge was laid up below Notre Dame Church in charge of a caretaker, and he let me sleep aboard after I'd run about all day from office to office, seeking justice and fair dealing, and getting speeches concerning liberty. None heeded me. Looking back on it, I can't rightly blame 'em. I'd no money, my clothes was filthy mucked, I hadn't changed my linen in weeks, and I'd no proof of my claims except the ship's papers, which they said I might have stolen. The thieves! The doorkeeper to the American ambassador, for I never even saw the secretary, he swore I spoke French a sight too well for an American citizen. Worse than that, I'd spent my money, do you see, and I took to fiddling in the streets for my keep, and a ship's captain with a fiddle under his arm, well, I don't blame him that they didn't believe me. I come back to the barge one day, late in this month Brumaire, as it was, fair beazled out. Old Maynon, the caretaker, he lit a fire in a bucket and was grilling a herring. "Courage, mon ami," he said. "Dinner is served." "I can't eat," I says. "I can't do any more. It's stronger than I am." "Bah," he says. "Nothing's stronger than a man. Me, for example. Less than 2 years ago I was blown up in the Orient in Aboukir Bay, but I descended again and hit the water like a fairy. Look at me now," he says. He wasn't much to look at, for he'd only one leg and one eye, but the cheerfulest soul that ever trod shoe leather. "That's worse than 111 hogshead of baccy," he goes on. "You're young, too. What wouldn't I give to be young in France at this hour? There's nothing you couldn't do," he says. "The ball's at your feet. Kick it." He kicks the old fire bucket with his peg leg. "General Bonaparte, for example," he goes on. "That man's a babe compared to me, and see what he's done already. He's conquered Egypt and Austria and Italy, half Europe," he says, "and now he sails back to Paris, and he sails out to St. Cloud down the river here. Don't stare at the river, you young fool. And all in front of these pig-jobbing lawyers and citizens, he makes himself consul, which is as good as a king. He'll be king, too, in the next 3 turns of the capstan. King of France, England, and the world. Think of that," he shouts, "and eat your herring." I says something about Boney. If he hadn't been fighting England, I shouldn't have lost my baccy, should I? "Young fellow," said Magnon, "you don't understand." We hear cheering. A carriage passed over the bridge with 2 in it. "That's the man himself," says Magnon. "He'll give him something to cheer for soon." He stands up at the salute. "Who's t'other in black beside him?" I asks, fairly shaken all over. "Ah, he's the clever one. You'll hear of him before long. He's that scoundrel bishop, Tallyrand." "It is," I said, and up the steps I went with my fiddle and run after the carriage, calling, "Abbé, abbé!" The soldier knocked the wind out of me with the back of his sword, but I had sense to keep on following till the carriage stopped, and there just was a crowd round the house door. I must have been half crazy, else I wouldn't have struck up "Si le roi m'avait donné Paris la grande ville." I thought it might remind him. "That is a good omen," he says to Boney, sitting all hunched up, and he looks straight at me. "Abbé, oh, abbé," I says, "don't you remember Toby in 118 2nd Street?" He said not a word, just crooked his long white finger to the guard at the door while the carriage steps were let down. I skipped into the house, and they slammed the door in the crowd's face. "You go there," says the soldier, and shoves me into an empty room where I catched my first breath since I'd left the barge. Presently I heard plates rattling next door. There were only folding doors between, and a cork drawn. "I tell you," someone shouts with his mouth full, "it was all that sulky-ass Sienne's fault. Only my speech to the 500 saved the situation." "Did it save your coat?" said Tallyrand. "I hear they tore it when they threw you out. Don't gasconade me. You may be in the road to victory, but you aren't there yet." Then I guessed t'other man was Boney. He stamped around and swore at Tallyrand. "You forget yourself, consul," said Tallyrand. "Or rather, you remember yourself, Corsican." "Pig," says Boney, and worse. "Emperor," says Tallyrand, but the way he spoke it sounded worst of all. Someone must have backed against the folding doors, for they flew open and showed me in the middle of the room. Boney whipped out his pistol before I could stand up. "General," says Tallyrand to him, "this gentleman has a habit of catching us canaille en déshabille. Put that thing down." Boney laid it on the table, so I guessed which was master. Tallyrand takes my hand, "Charmed to see you again, Candide," he said. "How is the adorable Dr. Pangloss and the noble Huron?" "They were doing very well when I left," I said, "but I'm not." "Do you sell buttons now?" he says, and fills me a glass of wine off the table. "Madeira," says he, "not so good as some I have drunk." "You mountebank," Boney roars, "turn that out." He didn't even say man, but Tallyrand, being gentle-born, just went on. "Pheasant is not so good as pork," he says. "You will find some at that table if you will do me the honor to sit down. Pass him a clean plate, General." And as true as I'm here, Boney slid a plate along just like a sulky child. He was a lank-haired, yellow-skinned little man, as nervous as a cat, and as dangerous. I could feel that. "And now," said Tallyrand, crossing his game leg over his sound one, "will you tell me your story?" I was in a fluster, but I told him nearly everything from the time he left me the $500 in Philadelphia to my losing my ship and cargo at Le Havre. Boney began by listening, but after a bit he dropped into his own thoughts and looked at the crowd sideways through the front room curtains. Tallyrand called to him when I'd done. "Eh, what need we now?" says Boney. "What we need is peace for the next 3 or 4 years." "Quite so," says Tallyrand. "Meantime, I want the consul's order to the prize court at Le Havre to restore my friend his ship." "Nonsense," says Boney. "Give away an oak-built brig of 207 tons for sentiment? Certainly not. She must be armed into my navy with 14 12-pounders and 2 long 4s. Is she strong enough to bear a long 12 forward?" Now, I could have sworn he'd paid no heed to my talk, but that wonderful headpiece of his seemingly skimmed off every word of it that was useful to him. "Ah, General," says Tallyrand, "you are a magician without morals. But the brig is undoubtedly American, and we don't want to offend them more than we already have." "Need anybody talk about the affair?" he says. He didn't look at me, but I knew what was in his mind. Just cold murder, because I worried him. And he'd order it as easy as ordering his carriage. "You can't stop him," I said. "There's 22 other men besides me." I felt a little more. It set me screaming like a wired hare. "Undoubtedly American," Tallyrand went on. "You would gain something if you returned to the ship with a message of fraternal goodwill, published in the Monsieur, that's a French newspaper like the Philadelphia Aurora." "A good idea," Boney answers. "One could say much in a message." "It might be useful," said Tallyrand. "Shall I have the message prepared?" He wrote something in a little pocket ledger. "Yes, for me to embellish this evening. The Monsieur will publish it tonight." "Certainly. Sign, please," said Tallyrand, tearing the leaf out. "But that's the order to return the brig," says Boney. "Is that necessary? Why should I lose a good ship? Haven't I lost enough ships already?" Tallyrand didn't answer any of those questions. Then Boney sidled up to the table and jabs his pen into the ink. Then he shies at the paper again. "My signature alone is useless," he says. "You must have the other 2 consuls as well. Sieyes and Roger Ducos must sign. We must preserve the laws." "By the time my friend presents it," said Tallyrand, still looking out the window, "only 1 signature will be necessary." Boney smiles. "It's a swindle," says he, but he signed and pushed the paper across. "Give that to the president of the prize court at Le Havre," said Tallyrand, "and he will give you back your ship. I will settle the cargo myself. You've told me how much it cost. What profit did you expect to make?" Well, then, as man to man, I was bound to warn him that I'd set out to run it into England without trouble in the revenue, so I couldn't rightly set bounds to my profit. "I guessed that all along," said Puck. There never was a Lee to Warminghurst that wasn't a smuggler for last and first." The children laughed. "It's comical enough now," said Farrell, "but I didn't laugh then." Says Tallyrand after a minute, "I'm a bad accountant, and I have several calculations on hand at present. Shall we say twice the cost of the cargo?" Say? I couldn't say a word. I sat choking and nodding like a china image while he wrote an order to his secretary to pay me. I won't say how much, because you wouldn't believe it. "Oh, bless you, Abbé, God bless you," I got out at last. "Yes," he says, "I am a priest in spite of myself, but they call me bishop now. Take this for my episcopal blessing." And he hands me the paper. He stole all that money from me, says Boney over my shoulder. A Bank of France is another of the things we must make. Are you mad? He shouts at Tallyrand. Quite, says Tallyrand, getting up. But be calm. The disease will never attack you. It is called gratitude. This gentleman found me in the street and fed me when I was hungry. I see, and he has made a fine scene of it, and you have paid him, I suppose. Meantime, France waits. Oh, poor France, says Tallyrand. Goodbye, Candide, he says to me. By the way, he says, have you yet got Red Jacket's permission to tell me what the President said to his cabinet after Monsieur Jeanette rode away? I couldn't speak. I could only shake my head, and Boney, so impatient he was to go on with his doings, he ran at me and fair pushed me out of the room. And that was all there was to it. Pharaoh stood up and slid his fiddle into one of his big skirt pockets as though it were a dead hare. Oh, but I want to know lots and lots more, said Dan. How you got home, and what old Magnon said on the barge, and wasn't your cousin surprised when he had to give back the Berthe Aurette? And tell us more about Toby, cried Una. Yes, and Red Jacket, said Dan. Won't you tell us any more? They both pleaded. Puck kicked the oak branch on the fire till it set up a column of smoke that made them sneeze. When they had finished, the shawl was empty, except for old Hobden stamping through the larches. Them gypsies have took two, he said, my black pullet and my little gingy speckled cockerel. I thought so, said Dan, picking up one tail feather the old woman had overlooked. Which way'd they go? Which way'd the runagates go? Said Hobden. Hobden, said Una, would you like it if we told Keeper Ridley all your goings and comings? Poor honest men. Your jar of Virginie will cost you a guinea, which you reckon too much by 5 shillings or 10. But light your churchwarden and judge it accordin' when I've told you the troubles of poor honest men. From the capes of the Delaware, as you are well aware, we sail with tobacco for England, but then our own British cruisers, they watch us come through, sir, and they press 50 of us poor honest men. Or if by quick sailing, the thick weather prevailing, we leave them behind, as we do now and then, we are sure of a gun from each frigate we run from, which is often destruction to poor honest men. Broadsides the Atlantic we tumble short-handed, with shot-holes to plug and new canvas to bend, and off the Azores, Dutch dons and monsignors are waiting to terrify poor honest men. Napoleon's embargo is laid on all cargo, which comfort or aid to King George may intend, and since roll, twist, and leaf of all comforts is chief, they try for to steal it from poor honest men. With no heart for a fight, we take refuge in flight, but fire as we run our retreat to defend, until our stern chasers cut up her forebracers, and she flies off the wind from us poor honest men. Twixt the 40s and 50s, southeastward the drift is, and so when we think we are making Land's End, alas, it is Ushant with half the King's navy blockading French ports against poor honest men. But they may not quit station, which is our salvation, so swiftly we stand to the nor'ard again, and finding the tail of a homeward-bound gale, we slip past the Scillies like poor honest men. Twixt the Lizard and Dover we hand our stuff over, though I may not inform you how we do it, nor when, but a light on each quarter, low down on the water, is well understanded by poor honest men. Even then we have dangers from meddlesome strangers who spy on our business and are not content to take a smooth answer except with a handpike, and then they say they are murdered by poor honest men. To be drowned or shot is our natural lot. Why should we moreover be hanged in the end, after all our great pains, for to dangle in chains as though we were smugglers, not poor honest men? And we'll find out how other honest men fare next time.